This is Hard Parking, sponsored by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning, recording from my home studio here in Gilbert, Arizona. It's going to be a different episode. I have a lot of things to talk about. Very little of it actually has to do with cars. First off, I do have the autocannon gear. I think I had mentioned that before. I think I'm going to do a giveaway. I have some stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff. But as part of the program, as part of the sponsorship that I have with autocannon, every time they release a new series, I get basically one of everything, which is super cool. Now, I've gone on and I've ordered stuff and paid my own money for it just to support the brand. Why not? But I do have a few shirts. So if you guys go to my Instagram at Jhae Pfenning, you should already know what it is. And if you're not on Instagram, I'm sorry to hear that. But you'll see me, I'm wearing... In the main profile, I have a pullover hoodie. Somewhere else, I have a jacket. I have a really cool shirt. Those are the things I'm going to give away. And I think I'm going to give away on social media. I think I might give them away on Instagram. Might tell you have to follow Autocannon Official and maybe subscribe to my YouTube channel, which, by the way, is slowly growing. I'm really excited about that. It's one of those things where you just upload stuff and maybe 50 people watch it. Maybe 200 people watch something. Maybe 3 people watch something. And I think this podcast, the RSS feed, has a lot to do with that channel's growth. Now, I'm not trying to get carried away here. I don't have 30,000 subscribers and 50,000 hours. None of that. I'm not even to 4,000 hours yet. But I passed 3. At 3,000 hours, you can start setting up a store and things like that. So I need to connect a Hard Parking Pod store there. Ideally, they're looking for Shopify, which is like $500 a year. Obviously, I don't want to pay that when no one ever places an order, which, by the way, thank you to Nick for placing the order. I'm going to get that out to you. It's one of the few hard parking orders that I actually get. Perception versus reality. Perception is I'm killing it. The reality is nobody wants to buy my stuff, but everybody wants it for free, which is why we're giving away the autocannon stuff. I actually started setting up an Instagram store. Finally, I think you can go to my profile and shop. I only have one shirt up there right now, the 2024 logo shirt. It's kind of a test. I'm just going to see what happens with that, because I uploaded it. I said, okay, I want to do small, medium, and large, 2X and 3X. Small, medium, and large, $25. 2X and 3X, $28. They cost more for me to buy, which is why I have to sell them for more. Sometimes they cost me significantly more. But then when I said save, when I looked, it said, okay, you have 10 items and you have 92 whatever. And it said I have 10 of every single size, which I don't. I may have 1 or 2 2Xs, 1 or 2 3Xs. I'm actually out of larges as of right now, at least some black, but I'm going to order them. Don't worry about that. I feel like it's time to move forward with some of these things I've been sitting on. It's procrastination. You guys know this isn't a political podcast. And I don't really talk politics that much, but I am a real person. I am kind of... I don't wake up and say I'm a Republican. I don't wake up and say I'm a Democrat. But this is an election year. Obviously, you all should know that. And I think to wake up and say, hey, I'm going to vote for whoever is Republican because I'm Republican, or I'm going to vote for whoever's Democrat because I'm Democrat, I think it's very reckless. It's very reckless because when you look at the sides, bipartisanship, there's good things about both sides. But then there's also very not good things about both sides. And I think for the first time, well, I guess I can argue and say the third time in recent history, but I think if you were to rank them, this election so far between the Democrats and the Republicans is probably the worst one in modern history. Like you can't go for Biden again. The guy is losing it. And I could easily say you can't vote for Trump. Because forget this whole guilty verdict, all that BS. Obviously, he's guilty, but having listened to people that are 10 times smarter than I am, which, by the way, I do that all the time. I love to listen to people that's infinitely smarter than me talk and debate about things that I typically don't care that much about or I'm not as educated about. Because from that, you learn a little bit. And if you align yourself always, well, before I finish that statement, one of the keys to success is they always say, surround yourself with like-minded people. And I think what that really means is if you want to grow, you need to surround yourself with people that also want to grow. But I think somewhere lost in there, it's surround yourself with people like you, people that agree with the things you agree with, people who don't like the things you don't like. And that's a very dangerous thing, a very dangerous game to play. I have friends that I don't agree with all the time, and they sure as hell don't agree with me. I have people who financially support this podcast that have said, Jay, sometimes you say stuff where I just kind of look at the radio and I'm like, what the hell was that? But they still support this podcast. And even if they didn't, they're still friends of mine. I have very good friends of mine that financially support this podcast because they believe in it. They believe in the things that I say. They believe in the fact that I have an opinion, and they love to see me work really hard. So it's okay not to agree with anybody. So when I say that about Trump or I say that about Biden, it's not for you guys to come at me. That's my observation. I sit back and I observe things. And that is my observation is the state of our country, the state of our presidency is in shambles, and it might be too late to do anything. Is it Kennedy? Is Bobby Kennedy the third person, or that's RFK, right? Robert? Yeah, that's Bobby. I think he's running as an independent, but he's not going to win. It's really, whoever votes for him just takes away votes from one of the other two. And make no mistake, I have a hard time believing that Trump will not still run for president. Until the legal system says he can't, he will. And it's just crazy. I don't know. Now, I said this is the worst time. The last time it was bad was, 2020. You still had to go for Trump or Biden, right? Biden literally came out of nowhere. They had nobody, so they grabbed Biden, and that looked like a puppet show. People were hating Trump because of the last 4 years, but really 2020, so that's, I don't know. But then before that, in 2016, who are you going to go for? Hillary Clinton? You don't trust her. Shredding emails, the whole Benghazi thing. And so people wanted a CEO to run this country, and that's how Donald Trump got elected. Now, you may not like the things he said, and may not like a lot of things, but we've made so many poor decisions from the top down for so long, we wanted something new and different. And that's how we got Trump the first time. And people got tired of him because he was rude and he offended you. And he was a racist because he said close the borders, which he was 100% correct. So we had to get him out of there. Hail Biden. Now, I don't know. It's damn if you do and damn if you don't with that. I'm still waiting for Biden to forgive my student loans. I'd love him if he did that. Because I'm just like anybody else. It's the same reason why people still go to Walmart instead of the mom and pop store. You want to support the little man, but at the end of the day, your dollar is what counts. At the end of the day, do I want to go over here and spend $7 for a special cafe Americano at my local coffee shop? Or do I want to go to Starbucks and spend $3? Or do I want to go to Speedway and spend $1.50? Or do I want to just make it at home? I'm probably going to make it at home. Speedway. No, I'm not going to go to Speedway. At home or Starbucks. And once every blue moon, I'll go to the specialty coffee shop ran by the local small business owner and pay $7 for something that's 2/3 the size of what I normally get anywhere else. At the end of the day, it comes down to the dollar. And it's the same deal with me. I make decent money. My wife makes a little bit more money than I do. But we have student loans. She's almost done. I still have them. And just because I make money doesn't mean that I should have to pay it. And I'm not saying I shouldn't have to pay it, but as long as we're forgiving billions of dollars and killing the economy even worse, the financial state of our whatever this country is, which by the way, I love my country. I'd rather live nowhere else, I don't think, than here. But as long as you're forgiving all of that, because here's the deal, and I've said this before on this podcast, it's been maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3. I have a specialty degree. I took that specialty degree because it was a hot spot that the government wanted at the time that I took it. I didn't know, because they didn't tell me, how difficult it would be to even get a job in that field. You either have to be military or you have to be sponsored, and you have to be a certain age. I was too old. By the time I graduated college, I was too old to apply for half of the potential employers, direct employers. Otherwise, it would have been, I got to go to the military. Now, what kind of degree do you think you would get in college where your only options are work for a third party, enlist in the military, or you're going to age out immediately? That in itself should at least get me some consideration for some level of student loan forgiveness. I can't use a degree that I racked up a lot of money trying to get. Now, my debt isn't nearly as much as some people listening to this podcast. And it may be 2 or 3 or 4-fold more than the next person. But at the end of the day, that's still $560 a month that I have to pay in student loans that we are paying, by the way. We're not filing grievance. I have a job. I only file a forbearance if I don't have a job, which there's been times in my past where I haven't had a job and we've had to scrape. We're normal people just like anybody else. I've had to empty my 401k more than once in my life. Thank God it's been a long time, 10 years or so. But the fact remains is if we're going to forgive all these other people, went to these technical institutes and all these, I think one of the things is if you felt like you were misled or if your financial institution misled you. And if you go online and look, if you work for the government, if you do this, if you're one of these 4 industries, you're eligible for forgiveness. One of them is, I think, is a healthcare provider or healthcare industry. Now, I'm healthcare IT, but one could argue people in the healthcare industry, unless you're an X-ray tech, if you're an MRI tech, you're CT, you're a charge nurse, you're an MD, they get paid good money, really good money. And last time I checked, the medical field isn't going anywhere, so that's guaranteed. They get forgiven. But I can't. And again, I don't mind paying. I am paying. You tell me I have to pay it, I'm going to pay it. But while you're forgiving stuff, can you forgive some of mine or all of mine? Because at the end of the day, my student loan is the equivalent of 1/4 being tossed into a wishing well full of money. It's just another coin in the well. And sure, if it's the first coin, makes a bigger impact. If it's one of millions of coins, not sure it really matters in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the trillions of dollars that we have in deficit. I forgot to tell you guys about 4Wheel Online. For over a decade, 4Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They are dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any maker model on the road. The truck products cover everything to give your truck a custom look and added functionality. Need a wheel and tire package? Head over and use the configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. Visit them online at 4Wheel Online. So I spent the better part of this weekend working. Well, first part of it, I worked outside in the backyard, assembling the furniture and things like that. My wife just likes to buy all this stuff, and it makes the yard look really nice, but I get in trouble for spending. And honestly, at the end of the day, I really don't spend that much money. If you were going to look at my American Express and compare it to everything we buy on Amazon and all the other stuff on her card, I can guarantee you there's a lot more spend coming out of that side of the house than on mine. And when it comes to me doing trips, car stuff, a very large percentage of that money comes out of the hard parking media stuff. So if I go to a car event and I have hard parking media splattered all over my cars, I can write part of that off. Sure, of course, and I do. All the stuff in this office, but it looks like I'm spending a lot of money, but I'm really not. I'm very cost conscientious because I don't want to get in that point where I don't have any money and I'm up to my neck in personal debt and business debt. And my allowance that I get every week isn't enough to pay for it. And that's really my only income, my allowance and my podcast. But I'm working that YouTube and I'm getting there. But when it comes to the yard, all the stuff. I think we're done. We're basically done. And the yard looks great. It does. And so I wanted to get that stuff out of the way earlier in the weekend so that I could focus on doing my reaction videos. I want to rearrange my office at some point soon. Again, for the umpteenth time. Do something different. I want to take the felt that I have in my office and change the color. Like I'll tell you guys this. I think it was 2 weeks ago maybe, I bought some more acoustic fabric as it was advertised on Joann Fabric's site. About $130 worth. It's expensive stuff. $30 a yard. Way more than I've ever paid for anything else in my office. I went and picked it up and it looks and feels like carpet. But that thing's been rolled up in the loft since then. I just have not had a chance to get to it. But I want to get that taken care of. But this weekend, I was also in the garage because I'm trying to build content, and this is the car part of this podcast. You guys know I have an Infiniti FX50S, whatever. But a year ago, I bought a bumper for it. A new bumper, a new grill. I bought a new front lower clip. Baja Designs fog lights. Very, very, very nice fog lights for off-roading, which I don't do. But I wanted something different. And that stuff's been sitting in my garage because I just haven't had time to do anything with it. And what happens when you have a giant SUV bumper in your garage and a front lower aero piece in your garage and a lower part of the bumper in your garage and a small K car with its wheels and tires and 2 more sets of wheels and tires? You don't have a lot of room in your garage. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that the NSX is out. I said that last week. To do some car products, but I didn't get around to it until this week. So the good thing about that is I'll have content. Once I edit that video, I'll have content to put it on the Hard Parking podcast or at Hard Parking on YouTube. Right there next to the rest of the videos that very few people watch. But what I found though is when I went back and looked at the statistics, a lot of people watch my Infiniti videos. We're talking small amount, like a couple thousand, not 30,000, 50,000, 250,000. It's not that kind of channel. I'm not that funny. I'm not that entertaining. I would argue I'm not even that good looking. I'm all right. Past my prime. But it's enough to bring people in for the content. And so I'm trying to get back into that. Trying to get back into the swing of that to where I can just, that's going to become my penny in the well. That's going to become my coin in the well. And maybe by the end of this year, my well will have a bunch of coins in it. Kind of like student loan forgiveness. As I said last week, I've been driving an RDX, and I was so I've been driving an RDX because the NSX is in the shop or it's at the warranty. I think I said that last week. I know I said that last week. It's in for some stuff, warranty work, and I haven't heard from them, and I don't care. I don't care. You know why? Because, like I said, this gives me an opportunity to work on the other cars in the garage while the RDX sits outside. But I was thinking this week, I should make a video on the RDX. I'm not going to. All the hard work I put in those videos, and I had some pretty decent videos. They're not Gears and Gasoline. They're not Throttle House, but they're decent. They're better than freaking Shmee. All you guys are listening to this probably subscribe to that guy. They're better than Doug DeMuro's, but maybe they're not because no one actually watches them. But I figured I could at least talk about it. So I do have a 2024 Acura RDX. And I gotta tell you, this is a $45,000 car beginning, small, sorry, not car, I don't know what you call it, SUV, a crossover. It's useless as an SUV for traditional purposes. The thing only has 1,500 pounds towing capacity, and that might not mean much to you guys listening. I'm telling you, that ain't shit. Like, by the time you add a trailer, you might be able to get a Ski-Doo on there, but that's about it. In my opinion, if you can't tow another vehicle, then there's no point. And this is one of those cars. You can't tow another vehicle because all vehicles weigh more than 1,500 pounds. Passenger vehicles, guys, those of you listening, those of you nerds, those of you race car drivers, sure, you can make it lighter than that, but that's not your normal car. Horsepower, 272. The thing is quick. It's quick because it's a turbocharged 2.0 liter. It's a lot quicker than the MDX. And so I don't mind hopping in that thing and running errands. Hell, we took it up north last week, and that thing was a blast. It's funny, though. Obviously, CarPlay, everything has CarPlay, but that vehicle has one standard USB and 1, 2, 3 seat ports. My wife was pissed because she brought her iPhone charger, and on one end, it's just a standard USB. Obviously, it's a Lightning on the other end because we have 14s, not 15s. But even if it had a C port on the phone end, the charge side was still a standard USB. Meanwhile, her MDX, which is a 2023, I think, 2023. I think it's a 2024 MDX as well, actually. That, I don't think it has a C port in it at all. Little inconsistency there from Acura. I would say if you can get one, a good one for like a decent used price, maybe $25,000 or something, it's cool. It's great running to Home Depot. It's great hauling people around. Obviously no third row because it's an RDX, not an MDX. But it drives nice. It's very nice. And maybe I'll turn it in. Maybe when it's time, I'll get it washed and turn it in. Maybe I'll take a couple photos of it. Maybe I'll do a car review on it. But I doubt it. Let's get into some real car news. So it looks like the Ford F-Series still leads in sales up to this date, or I would say up until the end of May. Through May, the Ford F-Series still leads in sales in the United States. I don't know if we should count the Ford F-Series because I don't know if they count fleet vehicles. I know I keep saying that at least once a year, but I don't think trucks should be on here. I think it should be SUVs that you and I both know that people drive, and the service guy is not going to pull up to your house in one outfitted, painted gloss white or matte white with some giant rack in the back and a bunch of tools and ladders and shit. We're talking normal vehicles. But year to date, again, as of May, Ford has sold 217,000, down from last year. But for normal vehicles, for normal people like you and I, the Toyota RAV4 is second, the Honda CR-V, the Toyota Camry, the Honda Civic, the Toyota Corolla, and then the Ford Explorer. Wow. So we have Honda up there. And Toyota is not really a surprise, but then it kind of is. The RAV4. Do you guys remember the RAV4 back in the, I think the 90s? That thing was ugly as hell. But at some point, 2014, 15-ish, it started looking really nice. And I think the RAV4 is actually a really nice kind of mid to smaller SUV, about the same size as that RDX that I'm darting around in outside. The CR-V, not too bad. Camry, Civic, Corolla. You guys know I want a Ford Explorer. I used to always want one, but it looks like a cop car because it is, but I can't drive that. Subaru cracked the top 10. Subaru Forester sitting in at number 8, followed by the Ford Maverick and the Hyundai Tucson. Then the Honda Accord coming in, and then Ford Transit Honda HR-V. So Honda, was it 5 of them in the top 12? Not bad, Honda. Let's talk about Hyundai and Kia. They make some really nice cars, like really nice cars. Every time I see one out there, and regardless of the one it is, if it's a newer one, I look at it and I go, wow, it's a nice looking vehicle. For the most part, I think there's one out there that's probably ugly. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but according to Automotive News, U.S.-backed EV charger network grows at a snail's pace despite a $5 billion investment. The sluggish rollout of EV charging stations underscores the complexity of building a nationwide fueling infrastructure led by states. Of course, we all knew this. You could say it's got to be EV by next year. Actually, it's 2035 till the cows come home, or whatever that statement is. But how do you convince these states? How do you convince these people who independently own these gas stations or these franchises to convert? Where's that infrastructure? We're still way out. I think the future is hybrid. Today's hybrid is better than yesterday's hybrid. Throw an EV motor in there a little bit. Throw a hybrid engine in there. And you're good. throw an EV motor, a high efficiency internal combustion motor, and you're fine for 99.9% of the commuters out there. People just want something to get them from point A to point B. I don't think they really care how they get there. I think that's why Tesla is so popular, because you don't have to get out and pump gas. You just plug it in at night when you're at home. But for those of you who have them, you know that whole charge station thing? I know a lot of people complain about that, but I would say that for a majority of people, the Teslas are exactly what they want. And rare is it that you see a Tesla when you're driving from one major city to the other major city. They're all within the city. It's like when I was in Spain, right? Portugal. I told you I saw little smart cars everywhere, but I didn't see them on the highway because the people who have them know those things are limited in speed. Well, in that case, it's just speed, but some of the EVs are limited in range. Why put yourself out there? Stay at home, and if you want to go anywhere, just take your normal car. And there you are. Then again, instead of Tesla, you have these driverless cars. Those of you who have been here in Phoenix know we have Waymos everywhere. And it's funny, I think they have them in Cali too, California. But when you're not used to seeing them, it freaks you out. And they used to be these ugly, weird little things with these giant bubbles on them, but now they're Jaguars. They still don't look like Jaguars unless we'll put it this way. They look like Jaguars. They look like the E-Pace, which looks like the F-Pace, but the electric version. But they have all these things all over them because they're being monitored by remote. Like a friend of mine's son, I don't know if he still works there, but when last time I talked to him, he worked for Waymo, and that was his job. He sat at a computer all day, and he monitored self-driving cars. And if he had to intervene and step in and make a correction or do something, he did it, and that's his job. I've never gotten one. It seems a little weird and creepy, but people do it, and their accident rate is way, way lower than people driving cars. But as soon as one thing happens with it, it's like the robots are here and they're going to kill us. Terminator, call Cyberdyne and shut them all down. The reality is their incidents are so small compared to regular cars. In the Bay Area, they have robo-taxis. These things are out there. Let me know if you have those in your area. Yasu over in Japan, you have to have those. Japan seems like they're always ahead of the game when it comes to technology. Or is that just our perception over here? British driverless car champion to take on U.S. tech giants. Wavy is set to test drive its technology in Silicon Valley behind Behemoth's backyard. So there's a bunch of these companies out there. Looks like the one from this is on telegraph.co.uk, business, blah, 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 blah. But this car they're using, looks like it's a Mustang Mach-E. So let me know. Have you guys ridden one of these autonomous? They're not really autonomous, right? Because autonomous suggests that they learn at their own pace. They learn on their own, like iRobot. They are, I have to believe they're driving around, they're mapping, and they're learning off of that, plus with a guided assistant. So they're not true artificial intelligence, but they're almost artificial intelligence. So maybe that's the future. Do you guys think that 20 years from now, if you're driving a car, you're in the minority on the road? Everybody else are in transportation devices that are driving themselves. That's my thought. Maybe. That's car news. Before we wrap this episode up, I know I started this thing kind of heavy, talking about politics, and I have to believe that there's only a small fraction of you still listening to this episode because it's all over the place. It's fractured. But that's who I am. But today, Monday, June 3rd, there's a lot of stuff going on as it relates to COVID-19. So you guys know there's been this big investigation, and they're calling it the COVID cover-up. And Fauci is supposed to appear on the panel at some point today, and his former assistant. And this is damning. And I heard about this on the All In. In fact, I'm going to play that for you right now, and let me know what you guys think about this.
Over the past year and a half, a House subcommittee has been focused on the origins of COVID-19. And they've been investigating the NIH's ties with gain-of-function research in Wuhan. But so far, most of the investigation is focused on nailing down this timeline of communication between NIH officials and an organization called EcoHealth Alliance. This is a nonprofit that's focused on infectious disease research. Now, these committee videos are online. We'll play you on in a moment. But through funding in the NIH, the EcoHealth organization was awarded research grants to various labs. This included the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the infamous one. EcoHealth violated terms of its grants by failing to report that gain-of-function experiments were being conducted in Wuhan. EcoHealth was supposed to report any experiment that exhibited characteristics leading it to being 10 times more infectious. But when that happened, it failed to disclose this research to the NIH. And on May 17th, a deputy director of the NIH acknowledged that the agency funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan via EcoHealth.
So what they're saying is gain of function is where you take something and you advance it to the point so where you can try to see what its effects are going to be so that you can hurry up and create an antidote or something to stop it should that actually come to light. And so they were doing this gain of function research, which this thing goes on to say, and this is from the All In podcast. You guys know I'm talking to that. I listen to that all the time. The All In with Chamath, Jason, Sachs, and Friedberg. Where President Obama said no. He wrote a bill. He said, nope, we're not doing that. He outlawed it. But yet they were still doing it. And they go on to say that the famous Wuhan lab, which you guys know it's famous because of the COVID, that was like a level 2 facility on top of that. So it didn't even have the same security. So what this thing is coming out and they're saying is something we all kind of knew anyway, or we felt. And I remember talking to Wes about this way back in 2020 when we first met. And when they started telling us to take the vaccines and stuff, it felt rushed. It felt weird. And I remember saying, I need my job. You know, we pay these people. We want to trust these people. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to trust that what they're saying is what we need to do, even though it sounds a little weird and it doesn't really make sense. You know, when it came down to the masks, I started digging into my own research and it just didn't make sense to me. We'll take the N95 masks. They said, put these on. These are the most expensive masks. These are surgical masks. These are the best masks you could buy. They filter down to, I forgot what it is, like what, 0.03 microns or 0.3 microns. But then they said, well, the coronavirus, COVID-19, this thing is smaller than that. And so common sense tells you that wearing a mask or not, that little droplet is going to go right through that mask. It's like trying to dump sand into a noodle strainer. It's just going to go right through. Unless it clumps up. Some of it might clump up. Most of it's going to go right through. It's going to go through slower than if you just drop sand out of your hand, but it's still going to go through. So that never made sense to me. 6 feet from somebody, okay, maybe that droplet's going to hit the ground, but then they say it's airborne. Then they say it's contact. Then they say it's this. Then they say it's that. So we all felt that it was a little weird and it didn't make sense, but we did it anyway. So what they're saying on this thing is Fauci, according to this, and according to, they're saying he lied actually in front of Congress, but he financed this type of research. And then when the disease got out, which probably wasn't intentional, I believe it wasn't as well, they were running experiments to see what would happen if this were to happen. How do we fight it? And somehow it got out. By getting out, they're saying he covered it up. He did everything he could to cover his own ass. And a lot of people died on it. So that's, I had mentioned that to my wife, and she started looking it up because, I don't know, she's been a Fauci apologist for some reason for years. And I remember telling her, I was like, I don't know, your boy Fauci, your boy Fauci, your boy Fauci. She'd always get so mad. So mad. Here's a little bit more.
Because Fauci initially denied this during his 2021 was this research to the NIH. And on May 17th, a deputy director of the NIH acknowledged that the agency funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan via EcoHealth. This is the key because Fauci initially denied this. During his 2021 Senate hearing, Fauci said, quote, I totally resent the lie you are now propagating in response to questions from Rand Paul about the lab leak theory. So Fauci either didn't know or he lied under oath. Let me pause there for a second. There's a lot more to the story, but when you hear this sort of setup, Friedberg, what rings concerning to you, true to you? And then we'll go on and we'll play some clips of this testimony, which is pretty wild.
I don't think that pre the emergence of the pandemic, that there was nefarious motives.
In other words, their funding of this was not done to create a pandemic. It might have been a mistake in hindsight, but...
Yeah, for many years, particularly following the original SARS pandemic, there was a lot of conversations around how do we get in front of the next pandemic? How do we figure out what's coming? And how do we prepare for it? And there was a lot of research that was launched to try and resolve that key question. This is like the movie 12 Monkeys. You guys ever see that movie? I think at one point.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, does the effort to try and stop the problem cause the problem? I think that from my point of view, there's a very high probability that there was some leak that meant that the work that was going on to try and get in front of the next pandemic and understand what we could do to prepare ourselves and what vaccines could be developed and so on actually led to the pandemic. So then when that happens, how do you respond when you're sitting in that seat? That's the key question that I think this committee is uncovering.
Do you think there was a cover-up, Friedberg? What is your intuition on that?
Yeah, I think that these guys definitely didn't want... I think what they were trying to do was prevent that from being the focal point and protect their own asses at the same time.
Okay, so Fauci knew very early as February 1st of 2020, that COVID came from a lab leak. The scientists said so. All they had to do was look under a microscope and see the furin cleavage site, which is not naturally occurring. It's something that was added, basically bioengineered to the virus in order to make it more transmissible in humans. So they knew right away that this somehow came from a lab leak. And Fauci and Collins said in emails that they were going to begin a brutal takedown in order to conceal this fundamental truth of the lab leak from the public. Now, why would Fauci need to conceal this? Because he had funded gain-of-function research programs via Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance to conduct, again, gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Moreover, Fauci was personally responsible for reversing an Obama-era decision to prohibit gain-of-function research because it was so risky. Fauci wrote op-eds justifying gain-of-function research. He wrote a paper in 2012, which was actually quite candid about the risks of gain-of-function. He describes the kind of lab leak that could occur and the type of virus that could escape from a lab because of gain-of-function, but then he says that it's a risk worth taking. So this is somebody who funded the Wuhan lab, he funded gain-of-function research, he was personally responsible for lifting the ban on gain-of-function research. He had a lot of reasons to want to hide the fact that COVID was engineered in a lab and was lab leak. And so we know that even before this conspiracy to basically defraud the FOIA request, that Fauci had done things like organize that letter to the Lancet, which smeared and demonized scientists who were trying to tell the truth, saying that the so-called zoological theory was nonsense, this had to be from a lab. He was doing things like this. And now we have this added piece, which is this longtime colleague of Fauci and Collins at NIH, Dr. David Morenz, developed a strategy for evading FOIA requests that would expose the truth. He did this by deleting government emails, which is a crime, by using private email to conduct government business, which is also a crime, and then strategically misspelling names and titles to frustrate the FOIA searches. And then the craziest part is that Morenz foolishly detailed his schemes in emails that Fauci would have seen, that Fauci was on the distribution list of. So he has no plausible deniability.
Yeah, so that was, I've never really done something like that on this podcast, but I think it's important that we kind of sit back and pay attention to some of this craziness because you don't really see it on the news. You have to go on the internet. You have to go to like the New York Post and things, or you have to listen to people that don't have agendas. That last opinion was, or the breakdown was from David Sachs, who is a very, very influential, very wealthy person who knows what he's talking about. All of them do. So, that's my favorite podcast. I listen to it every week, and they don't always get political, but when they talk, I listen. And that's like I was saying at the beginning, where I love listening to people who know so much more about things than I do. And, I trust their opinions. And they argue with each other all the time. They don't agree with each other. In fact, they got kind of heated on this whole thing a little bit. But one thing they all did agree on was this whole coronavirus, COVID-19, and Fauci doing this thing. And what does that mean for us? At the end of the day, what do you do with that information? We already don't trust the normal media. And then the next time something happens, do we fight back? I don't know what you do with that information other than just feel like you're more informed. And so with that being said, I want to thank Right Honda and Right Toyota for oilandline.com, Sell Shop Wireless Services, AutoCannon official Honda and Acura gear, officially licensed. Be looking for that on my social media. I'm going to do a giveaway any day now. Can't forget Patreon business supporter Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Automotive Specialty Tool out of Owings Mills, Maryland, Call Construction out of Caledonia, Michigan, Big House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan. And of course, last but not least, shipping success with the West Tankersley out of Boise, Idaho. Catch us on One Drink Wednesday, 7 o'clock Pacific time. We try to do it every week. We had some technical issues last week. And on top of that, Wes was out of town, so I had some technical issues. I couldn't get my Instagram to go live on my personal page or the One Drink Wednesday page as at One Drink Wednesday. Special shout out to Mark Stillman, Catherine Clark, City Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Alex Gamina, Drew Bunkley, and the aforementioned Yasu Chiba. Email the show, hardparkingpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at @jfinning. Join the Hard Parking Violations Facebook group. We have a lot of fun around there. I can't grow like you're telling the world how great the show is. Let's do this. Let's grow this thing together, and I'll talk to you all next week.
Shut up!